Welcome to the Best of Beaver County, presented by St. Barnabas, a weekly segment dedicated to putting the focus on the amazing things and the amazing people behind them in Beaver County. The Best of Beaver County is sponsored by and content is provided by St. Barnabas. The show airs every Thursday from 11 to 11:30 on WBVP, WMBA, 99.3 FM, and Facebook Live. Now, with no further ado, let's welcome host Mike Romigh to introduce today's program.
Good morning and welcome to the Best of Beaver County radio show on the St. Barnabas Radio Network. St. Barnabas has been caring for people in southwest Pennsylvania since 1900. Today, in Allegheny, Beaver, and Butler counties, we offer a full continuum of care for our residents and patients. This includes luxurious retirement living, personalized living assistance, and hands-on skilled care in our nursing center. Additionally, the St. Barnabas Medical Center offers the following health services to the community and our residents: full dentistry, home care, hospice care, and palliative care. St. Barnabas Health System continues to be focused on the needs of our community and our residents now and in the future. Building upon its heritage, St. Barnabas continues to reach out to those in need and lives out its mission through individual institutional services which help the health, education, and social needs of others. Men and women are invited to join St. Barnabas in the work of continuing Christian caring, healing, and teaching as we, along with St. Barnabas, bear witness to its founder's reminder that God is able. We look forward to having insightful conversations benefiting you and your family's well-being. To that end, the intent of our radio show is to introduce you to successful people who are having a positive impact in the greater Pittsburgh communities. Each month, we will bring you topics of interest to enlighten, entertain, and educate you. St. Barnabas offers solutions to healthy living by providing residents, patients, and our communities with opportunities to enhance their daily lives. Regardless of our age, when we gather with family and friends, we seem to always travel down memory lane. Our guest today was voted most likely to travel and to share stories that make up the fabric of our local communities. Please join me in welcoming back Jeff Snedden, historian, freelance writer, speaker, and teacher. Good morning, Jeff.
Thanks for having me.
Good to have you back in the studio once again.
Absolutely.
And I also look forward to seeing your posts on the internet nowadays, which I understand from one of your recent posts that you're going to get back into.
Yes, absolutely.
Looking forward to that. As far as the Best of Beaver County, we like to travel through Beaver County and pick out people and places that are very interesting to the history of the area. But when did you become interested in history? Not just Beaver County, because you're an educator and social studies is your forte.
Yes. My interest in history goes back to when I was very young. My grandfather was a history buff. Mm-hmm. Not really a historian, so to speak, but a history buff. And he always had me, he was always driving me around Beaver County, showing me, this used to be here,
mm-hmm.
This used to be here. And this was in the waning days of J&L Steel. And so we would always ride down along 51 and he'd show me all the different mills and everything. And it just really caught my interest because it seemed like there was a lot of stuff that was happening right here.
Mm-hmm.
And at school you'd learn about American history or world history, but it seemed like there was a lot of history right here. So I started researching just about my little area of Hopewell Township and South Heights, and it just from there kept expanding and expanding.
Mm-hmm. How do you make the connection between the historical aspect, as you said at one time, this was a booming area,
Yes.
Rivers, rails, and roads, to where we are today? Can you keep in touch with our roots, but still progress? Is that something that Beaver County has struggled with?
I think that a lot of people, and I don't want to be critical of Beaver County because I love Beaver County, but I think a lot of people in Beaver County feel like you have to bury the past in order to move forward. And as we've seen with some other areas of our state, places like Lawrenceville, for instance, that went through the same tough times that Beaver County went through. You can't embrace your history and still use that to move forward. Historical districts in former business districts, museums, cultural centers. There's a ton of stuff that can be done to revitalize a town from a historical perspective.
I think it's interesting you said bury our past, because anyone who's gone to Europe and you see the Colosseums and buildings that are hundreds of years old, that now vacationers flock to. And in places like Beaver County, it's out of sight, out of mind. Let's raise this building. Let's raise this former factory because we don't want to remember it, because we don't want to be pulled into the past. Let's build something new there.
Well, and also it's because a lot of our buildings and our former factories and mills, they were abandoned and they were left to rot. A lot of buildings, you and I were speaking before the show about downtown Aliquippa. Downtown Aliquippa is a very historic place, and up until the early 80s, pretty much the entire downtown was still intact. And over time, because the buildings became dilapidated, they had to be raised, safety concerns. Sure. So once you do that, you have to build something in its place. But a lot of towns, Beaver Falls, for instance, Ambridge, Monaca, New Brighton, managed to keep their downtown areas pretty intact, and I think that's going to help them in the future.
Well, you talk about Ambridge, and Merchant Street has been a huge transformation over the years, and I think that's partially, if not mostly, because of the effort to bring in dollars, funding, and grants to fix up Merchant Street, and it looks fabulous.
Yeah, and how neat is it that Ambridge has become sort of a little Hollywood?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
right here in Beaver County. I mean, they filmed a Tom Cruise movie over there last spring, and they're filming a League of Their Own TV series over there. And they built a little ballpark, and isn't
the HBO series? I think it's HBO. The Mayor of Kingston. They're going to shoot some stuff there this year.
And they filmed a movie there. Maybe it was
Tom
a TV
Hanks
show.
was there.
Yeah, they filmed a TV show there a few years ago. They used the old municipal building, the police station.
Yeah,
it's just that's the kind of stuff you can do, if you embrace your history.
Yeah, very good. And it takes people with perhaps your kind of dedication, because as an educator, you probably talk to your students about things like that. People who take for granted what we have here.
Yeah, I've been lucky that in my time teaching, I've had a lot of students that were very interested in history for their age, and it's when you're in high school, history is usually the last thing you're concentrating on. But I think when you can make the connection, and that's what anything in teaching, it's about relating the content to the learner. And whenever you bring local history into it, things they can see and touch, it makes history really pop, and it gets their interest up.
Yeah. There's a place right off at the bridge, the Beaver Falls New Brighton Bridge, Republic Steel is what I know it as, but it's been there forever. And then just recently they put up a plaque for the Chinese workers who came to Beaver County many, many years ago. We always knew of the Chinese cemetery halfway up College Hill. As a Geneva student, you've probably been aware of that. But my wife of 42 years wasn't aware that the Chinese were in Beaver County, and why would they put a plaque up for it?
Well, first off, where Republic Steel is at, that was Union drawn steel at one point. But prior to that, that was the location of the Beaver Falls Cutlery Company. And that was the company that in 1877 actually sent representatives to California to bring back Chinese American workers to work in the factory. And there was upwards of 250 Chinese Americans who lived and worked right down in Lower Beaver Falls. And it was not well received in our area.
I can't imagine that.
But the Reeves brothers of the Reeves Bank, they were integral in making that happen. And it was actually one of the Reeves brothers who took the long, at that point, weeks-long trip to California to go bring those workers back.
Yeah, and so things haven't really changed in 150 or 200 years, not only in Beaver County, but all over the place, because then when the usefulness of those workers was completed, then kind of cast them aside. And as you said, they weren't really welcome. But things haven't changed, because we're still saying that, foreigners aren't welcome and we don't want other people taking American workers' jobs.
Well, at that point in our history, you had between 1877 and in the early 20s, that was the big mass migration of European and Asian citizens over to the United States. And you had thousands of industrial jobs that needed to be filled, and the United States didn't have the labor. So it was necessary. And those Chinese Americans that came to Beaver Falls, many of them set down roots in this area, and there are still a few families who live in Beaver County who can trace their roots in Beaver County back to those workers. Okay.
It's part of the problem, and I'll stick with this for another second, and then we'll move on to a different topic, but as part of the reason for this, that we can't leave that history alone, because people continue to hope and hold out hope for the fact that those good-paying mill jobs are going to come back. So don't tear down those buildings.
I think that we can have a manufacturing future in America, but do I think we're ever going to have, 3 mills in Beaver County that are employing 15,000 people like we did in the 50s? No. But technology being how it is and moving forward how it does, I believe that a lot of our older mills were torn down because it would actually cost more to refit them with new technology than it would be to build a brand new mill. Well,
they left behind so many brownfield sites that it was contaminated.
One right out here.
Yeah, that's right. The B&W? Yeah. So in education, way back in the early days, we didn't have massive high schools with security detection devices and air conditioning even. We had one-room schoolhouses. I always see one, it seems like when I'm coming down off of out of Brighton Township down into Brady's Run. There seems to be one on the left-hand side there.
The little red schoolhouse.
Yeah. How many of them were around Beaver County?
Oh, wow.
Lots.
Yeah. So you have to picture Beaver County in the early 19th century. So we're talking the 1810s, 1820s. The only established towns were Beaver. At that point, Beaver Falls was established, but it was still, it hadn't really hit its stride yet, and it wouldn't until the 1860s. But where you had your established towns, you would have schools that were centrally located where the kids could all walk. But whenever you got out to the townships or to the rural areas, you had huge farms, acres and hundreds of acres, and it was impossible to have every kid in that area go to one school building. So they would place one-room schools at convenient areas, intersections of roads, near churches, anywhere where it was centrally located for the kids just in that basic area to get to. And some of these townships, Hopewell Township, Center Township, had upwards of 12 to 15 one-room schoolhouses operating at the same time throughout the 19th century. And one little unknown fact, in Beaver County, we had one-room schoolhouses that were still operating into the 1950s.
Wow. Amazing. So if you remember walking to school, walking to and from school for 2 miles in a driving snowstorm, both ways with holes in your shoes, then you're a fan of history. And that's why you should stick with us. And Jeff Snedden is our guest. He's a local historian. You've seen his stuff in the newspaper, online, and he's coming back out of semi-retirement to do more. So we're interested in the history of it all, and we're glad you're with us on the St. Barnabas Radio Network. This is the Best of Beaver County. It's been stated before that working at St. Barnabas is compassionate work with excellent career opportunities. In addition, we've heard when you enjoy what you're doing, it's not work. But don't take my word for it. Let's listen in to what motivates their employees.
Hi, my name's Susan Elleteri. I'm grateful for my nursing career and the satisfaction that excellent care brings. This alone keeps me coming back every day. When our residents look forward to seeing us and are thankful for our excellent care, it goes a long way. Keeps me coming back every day.
Find out about the exceptional career opportunities St. Barnabas has to offer by visiting stbarnabashealthsystem.com/careers for more information, or by calling 724-444-JOBS. That's 724-444-5627. Find out why St. Barnabas is apart from the ordinary.
So,
hey, yins are watching and listening to the Best of Beaver County on the St. Barnabas Radio Network. So go get yourself a jumbo sandwich and enjoy the talk of Jeff Snedden here. Jeff, you're an educated individual. You went to Geneva College. You don't use the word yuns anymore.
oh, I always use
You
yuns.
still say yuns?
Yeah, absolutely.
When you went to school with people from all over the country or all over the world, and they came to Geneva, and you say, hey, yuns want to go down there and get a slice of pizza at D&G, they said, what?
Well, if you're in the South, it's y'all.
Yeah.
That's the southern version of yins. And if you're just in the eastern part of our state in Philadelphia, use.
Yeah.
Use.
Yeah, utes. So where does it come from? Why are we Yunzers?
Pittsburghese.
Jagoffs.
It's Pittsburghese is it was coined in a book about 30 years ago. And it's because when you look at the Pittsburgh area and western Pennsylvania, no matter where you're at around here, the one key aspect that we all share is that pretty much all of our towns were founded by immigration during the late 19th century, early 20th century. And many of the English-speaking immigrants that came to the United States settled in this area, Scotch-Irish, English, and,
Germans,
Welsh.
Italians, Welsh. Huh?
And over time, that all the different accents, muddled together, melted together, and it formed what we have today. This very oddball style of English, where we call rubber bands gum bands, and sodas pop, and it's I wish there was a true history of Pittsburghese, where we could say this is where it came from, but.
Yeah, and don't forget to wash your feet tonight before you go to bed.
In that.
Wash. Some people still do say it instead of wash.
Yeah.
But it's something you grew up with. So when people say, speak English, well, you speak proper English. Well, we all have our own version of proper English, don't we?
It's funny because I've been a lot of places in the world, and you just start talking to somebody, and someone will always come up to you and say, you're from Pittsburgh. just based off of your accent and the way you talk, it's very it's unique.
And do you ever say, I don't have an accent? What's he talking about? I have an accent. What is that?
My whole family speaks like this.
Yeah, that's right. And they all learned it in the one-room schoolhouse.
Yes, they did.
Let's get back to that topic for a minute, because you said they were all over the place. In fact, your church is a former one-room schoolhouse.
Yes.
Now the congregation has grown a little bit, right?
Absolutely.
It can fit more in that than in that one-room schoolhouse.
My wife and I belong to Prince of Peace Anglican Church in Hopewell, and that was originally the Fairview School. And it's on Gringo Road in Hopewell. And the Fairview School was built to handle the large oil well community that grew up in what was called Gringo at the time. Now it's just part of Hopewell Township.
Okay.
And it was originally built in the 1880s, and it actually served as a one-room schoolhouse all the way up till World War II. And then it was bought out by a church, and from there it's continued to be a church today. But
are there any artifacts that remain?
if you tear down the drywall, you can see the artifacts. It's definitely an older building. You can tell by the construction. And there are several other one-room schoolhouses in Raccoon and Independence Township that are now used as homes.
Okay. Interesting stuff. Bridges to get from one side of the rivers to the other. Monaca is undergoing a transformation on Pennsylvania Avenue where they're going to put a roundabout in very soon. But most people coming from Rochester to Monaca or Monaca over to East Rochester at one time went across a toll bridge. And I remember doing that as a youth as well. And that's how we still refer to it. It's the toll bridge. The Blue Bridge and the toll bridge is what it is. But tell us a little bit about that, because where is it? Down near East Liverpool, somebody just bought that bridge that you'd still pay a toll to go across into West Virginia.
So the East Rochester toll bridge, it was in the mid '50s. Traffic was the number one concern of people that lived in the central part of the valley, Rochester, Monaca, Bridgewater, Beaver. Traffic was just crazy. You had, especially at your peak shift changes, where you had, thousands of workers coming from J&L, coming from Colonial Steel, coming from all over the place, or from Valvoline, from Freedom Oil. And Rochester was the nexus of 4 major routes. So all the traffic went through Rochester. And Freedom in Rochester, many people remember before the Freedom bypass was built, sitting in traffic on the one lane through Freedom. Well, all that traffic, people wanted not to have to sit in that kind of traffic. So in 1957, it was determined they needed to build a second bridge to work in parallel with the Monaca-Rochester Bridge, or the Rochester-Monaca Bridge.
Depending on who won the football game.
So they built the toll bridge, and in 1959 it opened. It cost $5.7 million to build, and it was fully funded by the county. Imagine that. And another cool aspect of the bridge was that it was built entirely by American Bridge in Ambridge, and Dravo Construction provided all the concrete. So it was all local hands that built it, and local funding. And originally it was a 10-cent toll to get across. And many people in our area still have the little tickets from the toll bridge. And it was raised to 15 cents a few years later. And then as industrial traffic started to wane, as the steel industry faltered, many people avoided it altogether because why are you going to pay a toll to go across this bridge when the one half mile away is free? So in 1974, they made it a free bridge. And
what year? 74?
74.
Okay.
And it's obviously it's a free bridge to this day, but many people will tell you, how do you get there? Well, how do you get to Big Lots in East Rochester? You go across the toll bridge.
I want to go to J&R's, go across the toll bridge
right.
over there. So those 10 and 15 cent tolls over the years, did that help pay off that $5 million debt?
Yeah, I mean that's what it was. That's what the toll was for, was to pay off construction of the bridge. I couldn't tell you if they reached that goal by 1974, but it was definitely for 15 years. They were collecting tolls, and I've got some photographs of that bridge with traffic backed up all the way back to Pennsylvania Avenue on one side, so I know people were using it.
Yeah. Interesting. Part of Beaver County's history, rich history in Beaver County. Jeff Snedden, a local historian, is our guest. And this is a short program, a half an hour, so there's so much stuff to talk about. Where would people find more of your interesting stories and historical tidbits?
Well, mainly right now on Facebook. My Facebook page, you just search for Jeffrey Snedden, freelance writer, and you'll find me. I post a lot of photographs on there and a lot of articles I write, and I am currently that's it. That's pretty much all. Only place you're going to find my work. Obviously, I'm no longer writing for the Beaver County Times, and I've had some other outlets that have shown interest in having me write for them. But as of right now, Facebook is the place to go.
I see people sharing your work all the time on Facebook, and that's another thing that I don't even think is on the menu here. But newspapers in Beaver County have changed substantially over the year, and of course, in the last 5 years, we've seen that change with the Beaver County Times. But we had several in Beaver County at one time. Oh
yeah, newspapers have changed everywhere, not just here, but. In Beaver County, if you go back to the 1950s, you had the Beaver Valley Times, which was the Beaver County Times. Prior to that, it was the Beaver Times and the Daily Times. Same newspaper, goes all the way back to the Western Argus days, 1840s. Unfortunately, we don't know how much longer we'll have it.
Right.
But Calkins newspapers that owned the Times for many years, they bought out the other newspapers in Beaver County, which was the Beaver Falls News Tribune.
Remember that?
The Aliquippa Gazette, the Ambridge Daily Citizen. Over time, all those newspapers were consolidated into the Times.
Yeah, and in each of those communities, and I know from the from the News Tribune, every time one of those papers was bought up by a bigger entity, people would say they just don't have the local stuff anymore. It's just not that, you can't look up the birth notices in the paper.
Well, when I think of the News Tribune, I think of, I think of going back and looking through those issues and seeing how back in the 1920s and 30s, each neighborhood had a person who would sum up the news of the neighborhood and turn it into the News Tribune. So you would get, on Mount Washington, Mrs. Walsh, went to Philadelphia to visit her nephew. She'll be back next week. In Lower Beaver Falls, there's a new lemonade stand open. Yeah. Just neat stuff like that kept people connected to the community.
I guess that's why we still have Sandy Giordano here at WBVP. She used to work for the Valley Tribune. Yeah. That was a small newspaper that used to come out in some of the areas once a week.
Yeah, we also had the Little News, which was the newspaper that had, at one point, it had 4 different north, south, east, west in Beaver County. And Gino Paroli did a lot of writing over the years for the Little News.
Very good. And restaurants, some people used to think you'd have to go to Youngstown or Pittsburgh to eat in a good restaurant, but we had several in Beaver County.
Yeah. So when the mall first opened, 1970, you had Ciro's, top of the mall. That was a very popular restaurant. And over the years, the Beaver Valley Mall has had other restaurants, Humphreys and, we won't mention Chi-Chi's because that didn't work out so hot.
Well, Chi-Chi's used to be where the top of the mall was.
Yes,
right?
yes.
In there. And then it was Bobby Rubino's for a while.
Bobby Rubino's.
And Randy Grossman, former Pittsburgh Steeler, owned a part of that.
Oh,
at
wow.
the time.
I did not know that.
Well, back in the 80s when I worked for this radio station, it was St. Patrick's Day and it was a promotion, and I ate in a Jell-O eating contest there, and it was bad. But that's what was going on back then.
And then, of course, you can't talk about Beaver County restaurants without mentioning Lou Papin.
Oh, you're going to like it.
That's right. Lou Papin. I grew up going to his restaurants in Northern Lights and in Green Garden Plaza.
Yeah. Right across the bridge.
Yep, he had his big restaurant up in Bridgewater. A true Beaver County icon.
Yes, definitely, and I understand he's still doing well. I hope so. They got out of the restaurant business. Some of his sons are into real estate, things like that. So, but so there was something for every income. As far as those restaurants are concerned, if you went to the top of the mall, it was a nightclub. It saw top-notch entertainment. It had a good, maybe expensive meal by some working man's pocketbook. But the Papin's restaurants were always
family restaurants.
Yes, very much so. And then he used to do the senior citizen picnics in Beaver County and give everybody a silver dollar back in those. You remember that?
I remember. I remember the commercials.
I'll bet there are still people today who have one of those silver dollars from Lou Papin.
I bet there are too.
Yeah. What else? Because we only have a couple of minutes left. There's so many interesting things to talk about. Some of the towns that used to be. Now we talk about Beaver Falls, New Brighton, Rochester, but there were other forgotten names of towns around the area.
Sure. One of the ones that I get asked about quite often was Wallace City.
Wallace City.
Wallace City was located in New Swickley Township, back of Freedom.
Okay.
Intersection today of Freedom Crider Road and I think it's 988 maybe.
Okay.
That was a really big oil well community at one point, and they actually had a railroad that went from there down to where Ohio River Boulevard is today and connected with the Pennsylvania Railroad. And there's still the old tunnels and stuff up around where they're working on Crow Run today.
And we have to end it here, but I'll bet there are people listening saying, we wouldn't have to pay as much for gasoline now if we would still have those oil wells pumping out there.
You could still drill for oil in Beaver County if you really wanted to.
Very good. Jeff Snedden, it's a pleasure having you back and on the program once again. We look forward to doing this all the time. It can be an 8-hour show for people with history of Beaver County, and that's why it's so important, and that's why it's important to have you here. Thank you, Jeff.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Local historian Jeffrey Snedden, and look for his work online on Facebook. And what do you call that?
Jeffrey Snedden, freelance writer.
Okay, and that's what they would look for on Facebook?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for being a part of the show, and thank you for listening to the Best of Beaver County on the St. Barnabas Radio Network. I'm Mike Romigh. We'll do it again next week. Thanks, and stay safe.
Thank you for listening to the Best of Beaver County. St. Barnabas is pleased to have provided content and sponsorship for the program. Tune in this Sunday at 11:30 for an encore presentation of today's program on Beaver County Radio. And next Thursday at 11 for another edition of the Best of Beaver County on WBVP, WMBA, and 99.3 FM.